Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia have struck a deal on a sweeping reconciliation package that will include massive tax hikes and climate change provisions at a time when Americans are dealing with historic inflation. Our congressional correspondent Kilmeny Dukart joining us now live from the Capitol with details. Kilmeny, good morning.
Emma, good morning. Fireworks is probably the best way to describe how this news has hit Capitol Hill this morning. We've been getting a lot of reaction, but right now, at this very moment, Democratic Senator Joe Manchin, who has been in isolation after being diagnosed with COVID-19, is talking to nearly 90 reporters going through sort of the genesis of how this deal with the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer came about, detailing to reporters the Inflation Reduction Act, as they're calling it, which they say would lower the deficit by $300 billion and reduce carbon emissions by 40% by the year 2030. And some of those details that we've been hearing from Senator Manchin is the confusion that he said he never walked away from the negotiating table, that yes, it has been very difficult and at times tense with Schumer, but they've had a friendship and a great working relationship during this, and they've been able to work something out. He also said that he previously walked away from the last deal, though, getting a little bit spooked by those CPI numbers that came out reflecting inflation hovering above 9%, but that the bill needed to be scrubbed to make sure that there wasn't anything inflammatory in it. But again, it's drawn a sharp rebuke from Republicans. We've heard from both minority leaders and the House and the Senate. Take a listen to this.
Do Democrats really believe that spending hundreds of billions of tax dollars right now while pursuing and punishing productive investments in the long run will lower inflation? Policies like that don't lower inflation. They cause inflation. You're going to spend more dollars chasing the same goods with fewer jobs and lower income in the long run, all during a recession.
All right, so let's take a look at what this legislation really aims to do. It's aiming to raise $739 billion in revenue by placing a 15% corporate tax on billion-dollar companies or larger, yielding $313 billion. Prescription drug pricing reform to net $288 billion, and by providing billions of dollars to the IRS to pursue tax enforcement. It's estimated to raise $124 billion, along with closing that carried interest loophole, add another $14 billion to that. Manchin on this press call said he didn't believe that the 15% corporate tax was going to be inflammatory or anyway or hurt Americans, but we heard House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy blasting the funding that would be going toward the IRS, saying that it's going to be used to chase and spy on Americans so the IRS can continue to collect their checks. But this has a long way to go, and there are still many questions right now, Emma and Sean, about whether this will have the support from Democratic Senator Kyrsten Sinema, who has previously opposed a lot of these tax hikes. It needs all 50 senators. So right now, the process is going through the Senate parliamentarian. Once it's finished, that could take possibly a few days. Democrats want to get this on the Senate floor as early as next week. But then by potentially the time it reaches the House, you may have House lawmakers having to come back from that August recess to hold a vote on this.
Either way, major shakeup in their schedules. Kilmeny Dukart with the latest. Kilmeny, thank you.
And joining us now on this is former Congressman and CEO of the Trump Media and Technology Group, Truth Social, Devin Nunes, joining us live. Devin, always good to see you. If I could jump into this, the Democrats want to push this reconciliation bill through, titled Inflation Reduction Act. It carries $370 billion of clean energy spending, climate energy, or climate change, if you will, spending within this bill. It comes at a time where there's 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP. It comes at a time of record high 41-year inflation, CPI, PPI numbers. Overall, with your congressional background, what's happening? Do you think this new reconciliation bill is needed, that we see on our screen now, is needed at this time?
Well, Sean, thank you. And it's a little bit shocking, quite frankly, because Joe Manchin has said no, no, no all the way along. I think there's probably a lot to come out from this. I just heard your reporter there in Washington, D.C. say that Joe Manchin is having some type of conference call with 90 reporters. Something just doesn't add up here as to why suddenly, at a time like this, on the same day where it's announced that there's a recession, to your point, you're going to pump even more money into the system. I mean, what have we not learned here? So, look, I was in Washington long enough. There's more to this story. Just have to stay tuned and try to get to the bottom of how did they coerce Joe Manchin to go along with this package.
To me, it's a common sense question. It needed to be asked yesterday.
Yeah.
And get an answer to it. Again, the climate revisions, that never got taken out. That is something that he has been opposed to. The basic question, what happened? I want to go to Jerome Powell now, if I can. I'll play the soundbite here addressing recession fears. After this happened, the Fed decided to raise those interest rates by 75 basis points. Here's that.
So as I mentioned, it doesn't seem that the U.S. economy is in recession right now, and I think you do see weakening, some slowdown, let's put it that way, in growth. Overall, you would say that in all probability, demand is still strong, and the economy is still on track to continue to grow this year.
Looking at that soundbite, I'm really not sure that they would ever call out a recession, this administration. Your thoughts?
The good thing about this is, if there is any good thing, is that we knew 3 or 4 days ago that we were headed into a recession. Why? Because the fake news media and the top level officials in the Biden administration went out on this creative redefining what the term recession actually means. And so, Sean, they kind of gave it away that we were headed into a recession. I think most Americans feel it now, largely because despite pay increases, the costs of everything are driven up so dramatically that, and you never know these numbers. There's lots of numbers out there. But one alarming figure to me was that 40% of Americans right now it's taking their entire paycheck just to pay the bills. And I think that should be of a very great concern. Now, look, there is something very strange, though, out in the economy that people can't define. And we just opened True Social last week in the United Kingdom. So the same thing was happening in London. And that is that virtually every business are looking for people to hire. And that's just not explainable. So there are so many people that have dropped out of the workforce, and we don't know if this is COVID related, if there was a change in people's habits, but it's happening, here in my home state of California. I spend a lot of time in Florida. It's happening there. And then, of course, in London. And I was in Washington, D.C. and New York City in the past month. And everywhere you go, I mean, you have a lot of restaurants who can only stay open for 5 hours a day. They stop serving breakfast and lunch. So something strange is afoot here, and I think there's still more to the story on that also.
Talking about another story, I think I got about a minute left with you. It's a little bit less than that. If I can get a comment on this, this headline here. Trump informs CNN of intent to sue for defamation, warns others. The letter demands CNN retract coverage of the former President Donald Trump since 2016 within 10 days or face a lawsuit. I realize this would be litigated, so certain comments you'll be able to make, maybe you wouldn't be able to make. But if we could just get your thoughts, or have you spoken with the president on this? Why now? Do you think CNN would comply? We've seen we've seen winnable scenarios with Nick Sandmann and others in this situation. Talk to me about it.
Yeah, look, as someone who has brought many defamation cases, it goes back to kind of what we were talking about earlier when I said that when I talked about how the left came out with a narrative 3 or 4 days ago. It's not just the Biden administration that's doing it and their top officials, it's the news media. And I think that's the overall complaint, that when you have a fake news media where they control 95% of all the outlets, thank God not Newsmax, but they create fake narratives and they go out to spread propaganda, which is very dangerous for a democratic republic. So if you take my cases, I haven't read, or I don't think the case has been filed yet of what President Trump is talking about filing, but the courts have got to step in, because if not, people are getting defamed and slandered day after day after day. And I think you've seen Clarence Thomas and other Supreme Court justices say this. I will be having a case against CNN that will be going hopefully before the Supreme Court. The judicial branch of government, if they don't step in, this is going to continue to happen where people's lives are being destroyed, whether it's Nick Sandmann or whether it's people whose political beliefs, like President Trump, he has things that he wants to say about policy issues. And every day he's defamed by these companies. And I went through the same process myself.
Yeah, just to be clear, we do have to go. But so yours got, I believe, tossed out by a judge. You're appealing all the way to the Supreme Court. Is that correct? Is that the update on your case?
Yeah, I mean, look, I have several cases that are going right now that are actually live and we are moving forward on those cases. They're in discovery right now. I have one case particularly against CNN that's an outrageous case. It accuses me of meeting with Russian agents and Russian oligarchs all over Europe. I mean, total nonsense. And look, what I've found in these cases, sadly, and I think if you take the Sandmann case from yesterday, if you get a judge that it was appointed by a Democratic president, almost every single time they rule against you, and then you have to appeal it. And I've done just that. I've appealed cases. I've won cases. Nick Sandmann will appeal this case. He'll likely win this case. But ultimately, we really need to get a case to the Supreme Court where we're going to overturn this ridiculous decision on New York Times v. Sullivan that holds public figures to some different standard than a regular U.S. citizen. It was a bad ruling from the beginning, and these fake news organizations have gotten away with murder on it. And now you've got the big tech companies who have joined with these fake news organizations to spread this propaganda even further into the American populace. You know, hence, why am I at True Social? Why did I leave Congress to do this? It's precisely because of this reason, because the American people's minds are being poisoned.
Devin Nunes joining us live. We do appreciate that, Devin. Always good to see you. Thank you for your time.
Hey, Sean, thanks for having me. Have a good day.
You too.
Hey guys, it's Rob Carson. I want to tell you about the Patriot Gold Group. But first, let me tell you that the S&P has already lost $8.2 trillion in 2022. Did you know that? Peak inflation is not even hit despite the Fed rate hikes on groceries, on gas. You know it as well as I do. Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs are warning of another 20% drop. Inflation is winning in a knockout right now. The Fed is going to raise rates again at the end of July. Meanwhile, Goldman, Wells Fargo, and Bloomberg are all forecasting gold to surpass all-time highs. If you want to invest in gold, call 888-936-2373 now. Call the Patriot Gold Group today and ask about their no-fee-for-life IRA. Sounds like a good deal, don't it? Here's the number, 888-936-2373. 888-936-2373 for the Patriot Gold Group.